Lead by Design. It's a new coaching leadership business. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, and maybe in particular why early career professionals should also be thinking about?
Coaching is one aspect of the business, but it's probably easiest to describe it as helping businesses and individuals prepare for change and helping businesses and individuals to implement change. Those are the two main buckets.
Yeah. Lead by Design. It's a new coaching leadership business. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
I have founded a couple of businesses in my career, and I've always been very specific about approaching an explicit need when I have a business or when I start a business. And my time as head of learning and transformation at Nevada has really helped me develop a deep understanding of the explicit need around leadership development. Because leadership development is a topic at all the HR and L&D conferences. It's high up on strategic imperatives for most organizations, and yet it's a very complex challenge to deal with. As organizations become flatter, teams are becoming greater, the roles of leaders are becoming more complex, more demanding, and leaders are having less and less time.
Can I ask just around leadership, maybe your philosophy or methodology?
Is to be really, really clear about strategic imperatives in the first instance. It's a bit like knowing where you're going in the first instance before you start thinking about, well, how do you get people to go there? I think the other part that's really, really key is getting a solid understanding of the business drivers that are going to get you there. The one thing that I'm an advocate for is, and I had a very interesting conversation with a senior leader recently who said, and his words were something to the effect of, most organizations have strategic imperatives that are very similar. You know, how do we make sure that leadership and leadership development is actually bespoke for what it is that we want to achieve? And I think this is where the business drivers come in, because organizations might be talking about operational excellence, but given the context and the unique scenario of each organization, the business drivers might be very different. For one organization, it might be tech adoption. For another one, it might be scaling your operation in terms of the number of salespeople you're putting in front of customers. My leadership philosophy is very rooted to strategic imperatives and business drivers. And then lastly, understanding people and what it is that amplifies the talents that people have. You know, how do we unleash the potential within people? I'm a person who's very passionate about unleashed potential, and I mean that's a whole topic on its own right, but how do we bring the best out of people once we've given them a clear roadmap of where we're going and how we're going to get there? How do we bring teams of people on board so that they're bringing their best self to that journey? And how do we bring teams together and bring out the best in each other as well?
I'm going to start with Lisa from Byron Bay. She was a colleague of mine. She's actually started a medicinal cannabis dispensary, all female led, so super inspiring leader, just like yourself. And her question was, what is the key difference between a good leader and a good manager?
People often ask me, what's the difference between leadership and management? The way I see it is that management is a formal title, it's a formal job, and leadership is not necessarily a title, because I see leadership as the ability to be clear on a goal and help others get there. And that doesn't necessarily come with a title. You know, you're an example of someone who doesn't have the title of leader, yet you have this innate ability to bring people on a journey towards a goal. So I thought I'd just add that.
Thank you. Thank you, Maryna. I appreciate that. And the next two questions come from Adri in Sydney, who you know well. Her first one is, what is one lesson or piece of advice that you have found extremely valuable during your pharma career?
Curiosity. Just stay open, just stay curious. I've talked about understand healthcare systems. I think that's a piece of advice I would give anyone new to the industry, anyone within the industry. It's becoming increasingly important as the healthcare system is becoming more and more complex. But connected to that is that curiosity. Even if you think you understand a system, maybe you're going into a GP practice and you think you know how things work. Stay curious. Ask those really, really powerful questions. Always seek to understand. As salespeople, it's so tempting in wanting to tell. So I think that's probably the main thing I would say is stay curious.
She was also curious to know what your advice is around how to navigate inevitable change in the pharma industry. And I know you've led 2 huge L&D transformations. So yeah, any advice around that?
I'm someone who's very passionate about change. I embrace change, I love change. So I do understand that we're not all the same. Change does trigger a very primal instinct in us, and that's to preserve. And fear is often our natural response to change. I see change as growth. Change is progress. Change is learning. It's inevitable. It's not something we can stop. And if I think across my career, I've been in healthcare sales or sales leadership for 34 years. And I think back to some of the early changes. When I started in the industry, there were no mobile phones, no GPS, no computers. And I fondly remember working with a sales team. I was in my late 20s in a sales manager role, and I so clearly remember the pushback I had from some of my sales team not wanting to learn how to use a computer.
Wow.
And like, it seems ludicrous now, right? But I often think back to examples like that, and I ask myself, well, what's today's example of that? And maybe it's ChatGPT, maybe it's AI. So I see change, it's inevitable, and my philosophy is embrace it and be the change, be part of the change. And think about, well, what is the good that might come from this?
Now, another question from Simone. What role do you see technology playing in shaping the future of pharmaceutical leaders and organisational strategies?
There's so much opportunity to be gained from broadening our skills. We call them becoming T-shaped people.
Yeah.
So having broader skills over and above the depth of our skills, because it leaves us better able to pivot and be more agile. If the jobs that we do or the work that we do fundamentally changes. Sometimes the changes aren't massive, they're small. In terms of tech and the impacts on leadership, data-driven decision-making, AI-assisted decision-making, you name it, it's endless, right? But there's so much upside that I see in that.
Last question from our international guest, Catherine from Basel in Switzerland. She would like to know, what are the key skills needed in the future to be a successful leader in pharma?
Great question, really great question. My mind goes towards some recent research published by Gartner, where they asked a very similar question, and the question really was around, they wanted to explore, and they surveyed over 9,000 people across 25 different industries. They wanted to survey leadership styles, and they wanted to understand whether there was a direct correlation between a leadership style and high-performing team. There were 4 types of leadership styles described, and the one that came out as the best able to lead high-performing teams, as well as prevent burnout in the leader themselves, is what they call the connector manager. And essentially the connector manager, this is my definition of a connector manager, is someone who deeply understands the people they lead, their needs, their aspirations, their learning goals, but they get out of the way. They don't feel that they're the one that has to be the only coach. They then help connect those people to the broader team for further learning and development and coaching, as well as the broader organization. To answer your question, what does the future leader look like? I think it's someone who better understands the needs of individuals, but also has that self-awareness around, well, when do I need to get out of the way and connect this person to someone else who might support their development better than what I can.
Fascinating. And if I can, would love to get the article off you, and I'll leave a link so the guys can look at the Gartner. If you were a pharmaceutical drug, what would your warning label say?
So if I was a pharmaceutical drug, the indication for me as a drug would be to treat fear and the fear of change. The ingredients of the drug would be curiosity and learning agility. And the warning label would say, beware, expanding comfort zone.
I love it. I love that. Oh my goodness.
That's where the magic happens, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're ready to take 500 milligrams of Maryna and expand your comfort zone, step out of the comfort zone, please reach out to her on LinkedIn. I'm sure Maryna would be more than happy to connect with you. Just beware, there may be side effects such as a sudden urge of inspiration or the sense to innovate, but you've been warned already. If you're finding that you're in your comfort zone for more than 8 hours, it's probably because you're missing a dose of Maryna, but it's also probably because you're not subscribed to the weekly Finding Pharma update. So get on board if you want to excel your pharmaceutical career and get out of the comfort zone. There'll be of weekly healthy doses of grit from thought leaders like Maryna. So don't get left behind, subscribe today, and we'll see you on the next video.